WFP warns Gaza faces famine risk as food supplies run out. Putin declares temporary Easter ceasefire in Ukraine. Hello and good afternoon, and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for watching. I'm Otto Othman and you're watching World Today. Now, the World Food Programme, WFP, has warned that 1 million people in Gaza, most of them displaced, are without a source of income and entirely dependent on humanitarian aid. In a statement issued in Jerusalem on Saturday, the WFP stressed that with food stocks dwindling and border crossings remain closed, Gaza is in urgent need of food assistance. WFP Deputy Executive Director Karl Skau also reiterated that WFP is running out of stocks to deliver to the Palestinians. Skau also stressed that by Monday, the WFP will not be able to continue with its street kitchens in Gaza. Skau said this means, from WFP's point of view, there is nothing left as they have been assisting over 1 million people over the past few months. The agency warned that hundreds of thousands of Gaza residents are at risk of food supplies continue to run low. With food scarce in the besieged and war-battered Gaza Strip, some desperate families have turned into eating sea turtles as their rare source of protein. After 18 months of devastating war and an Israeli blockade on aid since 2nd March, the United Nations has warned of a dire humanitarian situation for the 2.4 million inhabitants of the Palestinian territory. The heads of 12 major aid organizations also warned that famine is not just a risk, but likely rapidly unfolding in almost all parts of the territory. Meanwhile, Gaza's health ministry revealed that around 100 people have been killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza in the last 48 hours. Medical sources said some casualties were in Gaza City and northern Gaza, but deadly attacks took place across the Palestinian Strip, including in Khan Yunis and Rafah in the south. The Israeli occupation forces said troops were operating in the Shabaura and Tal as-Sultan areas near Rafah, as well as in northern Gaza, where Israel has taken control of large areas east of Gaza City. On Friday, Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, repeated that Israel intended to achieve its war aims. Palestinian Christians in Gaza, however, continued to hold temperate gatherings leading up to Easter amid the attacks. Gaza's health ministry says at least 51,065 Palestinians have been confirmed dead and 116,505 wounded in Israel's war on Gaza since it began 18 months ago. The Gaza government media office, however, updated its death toll to more than 61,700, saying thousands of people missing under the rubble are presumed dead. In another development, hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters scuffled with police in Istanbul on Saturday as they attempted to walk to Taksim Square. Pro-Palestinian protests take place regularly in Istanbul, but police block all rallies planned on Taksim Square. Saturday's protest was called by the main opposition Republican People's Party, and protesters at times also chanted slogans against President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, prompting warnings from police to stop illegal slogans. Scuffles broke out between police and protesters who pushed against the police barricade in the attempt to break through and walk to Taksim Square. Hundreds of police were stationed around Beyoglu in preparation for the protest, with pedestrian traffic on Istiklal Avenue, a main tourist area, heavily restricted. Police later drove the protesters from the area, at times scuffling with them and forcefully pushing them away using shields. U.S. strikes on a Yemen fuel port killed at least 80 people, Houthi rebels said Friday, in the deadliest attack of Washington's 15 months campaign against the group. Thursday's strikes on Ras Isa aimed at cut off supplies and funds for the rebels that control large swaths of the Arabian Peninsula's poorest country. Houthi Health Ministry spokesman Anis Al-Asbah said rescuers were still searching for bodies at the fuel terminal on the Red Sea, suggesting the number of dead could rise. The rebels, Al-Masirah TV, citing local officials, said the toll from the strike had risen to 80 dead and 150 wounded. The Houthis rebel announced missile attacks targeting Israel and 2 U.S. aircraft carriers. The U.S. military has hammered the Houthis with near-daily airstrikes for the past month in a bid to stamp out their attacks on shipping in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. Earlier on Friday, when the Ras Isa toll stood at 74, Al-Abashi said the overall number of deaths from renewed U.S. strikes since March was 198. Claiming solidarity with Palestinians, the rebels began attacking the key maritime route and Israeli territory after the Gaza war began in October 2023. They paused their attacks during a recent 2-month ceasefire. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Saturday announced an Easter truce in the conflict in Ukraine, starting his evening and lasting till midnight on Sunday. The short-term ceasefire proposal from Russia comes as President Donald Trump has been pressing both Moscow and Kyiv to agree a truce, but has failed to extract any major consensus from the Kremlin. Russia on Friday abandoned a moratorium on striking Ukrainian energy targets after each side accused the other of breaking a supposed deal without any formal agreement put in place. Putin said the latest truce proposal will show how sincere is the Kyiv's regime's readiness, its desire and ability to observe agreements and participate in the process of peace talks. Previous attempts at holding ceasefires for Easter in April 2022 and Orthodox Christmas in January 2023 were not implemented after both sides failed to agree on them. Russian Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov said Russian troops had retaken 1,260 square kilometers or 99.5% of territory seized by Ukraine in the Kursk region. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said his forces would observe a surprise Easter truce announced by Putin. The order to halt all combat over the Easter weekend came after months of efforts by U.S. President Donald Trump to get Moscow and Kyiv to agree a ceasefire. Ukraine and Russia conducted a swap of more than 500 prisoners of war on Saturday, the latest in a ceasefire or series of exchanges since Russia launched a full-scale invasion more than 3 years ago. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in a post on the Telegram messaging app, said 277 Ukrainian service personnel had returned home from Russian captivity. Russia's defense ministry said 246 servicemen had been handed over by Kyiv. It said a further 31 injured prisoners of war had been handed over to Ukraine, and 15 of its own wounded servicemen had also been returned by Kyiv. All Russian servicemen are now in Belarus, Moscow's close ally in the war, awaiting transfer back home. Video footage posted by Dmytro Libinets, Ukraine's Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, showed a gathering of Ukrainian servicemen, many wrapped in the blue and yellow national flag, in a wooded area alongside several buses. The men were then seen seated on the edge of a tarmac shouting patriotic slogans. The location of the gathering was not disclosed. Zelensky said a total of 4,552 Ukrainian service personnel and civilians had been returned since the start of Russia's invasion in February 2022. The developments followed remarks from U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday, who said peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine were coming to a head. He stressed that neither side was playing him in his diplomatic push to end the war. At least 11 killed in India, building collapse. Ecuadorian police reported on Friday that they had captured 4 alleged perpetrators of the armed attack that left 12 dead during a cockfight in a rural area in northwest of the country. Around midnight on Thursday, armed men dressed in military uniforms opened fire on attendees at the cockfight venue in the town of La Valencia, located on the border between provinces of Manabí and Santo Domingo. Now, Ecuador's National Police Commander Victor Hugo Zarate said in less than 24 hours they managed to apprehend the alleged perpetrators of the massacre. He added that the suspects are believed to be members of the feared criminal gang R7. Police Colonel Renan Miller Rivera said several people were injured in the shooting and were taken to nearby hospitals without specifying the number of wounded. Namabi is one of 6 Ecuadorian provinces, along with Quito and the mining town in the southwest, under the state of emergency declared by the government to confront the drug-related violence that has been bleeding the country dry. In light of the security situation, President Daniel Noboa had renewed the emergency measure shortly before last Sunday's presidential runoff, in which he was reflected over his leftist rival, Lucia Gonzalez. At least 11 people, including 3 children, were killed in New Delhi on Saturday after a residential building collapsed on the outskirts of the Indian capital. Now, local reports and authorities said incidents happened in the early hours in the northeastern district of the city that mostly houses immigrant or migrant workers, with rescue teams digging through the rubble throughout the day. 11 people were pronounced dead, through 11 others were rescued and taken to hospital. It was reported that 5 were still undergoing treatment. The cause of the collapse was not immediately known. Delhi Minister Kapil Mishra blamed corruption in the municipal council or government run by a rival political party for such building collapses, saying on X that construction of such illegal buildings is going on in full swing. He added that survey of all these illegal buildings is necessary and strict action is required against them. Local media reports said that the 4-story building came crashing down like a stack of cards. Building collapses are frequent in India, and illegal structures, often home to migrant workers, are common in big cities. Coming up in sports, Barcelona complete remarkable comeback to beat Celta Vigo. Al-Qadisiyah dented Al Nassr Saudi Pro League title hopes after they clinched a late 2-1 home win in Dammam yesterday. Al-Qadisiyah and Al Nassr have been struck in a battle for a 3rd spot in the standings of the SPL, which is the last qualifying place for AFC Champions League for the last couple of months. Al-Qadisiyah started the game off in dominant style at Prince Saud bin Jalawi Stadium as they managed to handle Al Nassr's attacks. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang had the first big chance of the game as he struck a powerful shot from 30 yards that barely missed the goal before Turki Al-Amar and Mohamed Abu Al-Shamat forced Bento into 2 saves. However, the home side soon got their very well-deserved opening goal as Aubameyang's shot was saved by Al Nassr's Portuguese keeper before Al-Amar struck on the rebound to give Al-Qadisiyah at first half lead. Al Nassr finally looked to be gaining some steam after the start of the second half. However, Mitchell's side were defensively solid and barely let Cristiano Ronaldo and John Duran test goalkeeper Cohen Castiles. Despite Mitchell's side's strong defence, Al Nassr found their perfect opportunity to equalise when Sadio Mane got onto Artovio's ball in behind to score the equaliser. However, the game had yet another twist in store as Aubameyang scored in the 86th minute to cut the gap to Al Nassr to only 2 points. River Plate returned to winning ways yesterday after a 3-0 Apertura win at Gimnasia Espriella Plata. Marcelo Gallardo's capital side came into the meeting on the back of 4 consecutive draws in Zone B, including a disappointing pair of 1-1 affairs against Talleres and Sarmiento. Now, the opening 45 minutes at Estadio Juan Carmelo Zerillo was defined by high-intensity back-and-forth play with former Austin FC star Sebastian Drisio opening the scoring in the 34th minute from inside 6 yards. Gimnasia boss Leonardo Madelon would make a triple change at the break, but despite his efforts to redefine this situation, River doubled the lead through Argentine youth starlet Franco Mastantuono after the 17-year-old weaved his way into the final third before dispatching a low drive past Nelson Infran. Now, it was the second big chance River created on the night, and it would be more than enough on the night for Los Molenanos to bank all 3 points away from home. Veteran midfielder Rodrigo Alendrio would extend River's advantage in the 82nd minute with a confident finish between Infran's legs at the near post to put the Argentine Giants out of sight. In La Liga, Barcelona's 4-3 comeback win over Celta Vigo showed the team will never give up. Coaching Hansi Flick said after Saturday's victory, which was only dependent by Robert Lewandowski's injury. Now, Rafinha's 98th-minute penalty gave Barcelona a crucial victory in La Liga title race, where they now have a 7-point lead over Real Madrid, who play 4th-placed Athletic Bilbao on Sunday. Flick said it was one of those comebacks that nobody forgets easily, adding it was not easy to win after Borja Iglesias netted a hat-trick to give Celta a 3-1 lead. With a double in the second half, Rafinha has now scored 30 goals for Barcelona in all competitions, and Flick could not contain his delight as he hugged the Brazilian after the full-time whistle. Barcelona will be sweating over Lewandowski's fitness after the Polish striker went down clutching his leg and was taken off late in the game. A hamstring injury may rule the 36-year-old, who has 40 goals in this season, out of their Copa del Rey final next weekend against Real Madrid, while Barcelona also face Inter Milan in the Champions League semi-finals later this month. Over in America, Benjamin Krameshi's first half goal was enough for Inter Miami to remain the only undefeated team in the MLS after a 1-0 win over the Columbus Crew on Saturday. The result means the Crew failed to break the franchise record for the longest unbeaten streak to start a season, having equaled the 8-match mark of 2010. Kremashi earned his first goal of the season after finishing off a flowing move with a diving header. A minute earlier, Miami goalkeeper Oscar Ustari made a reaction save on a tight shot by Max Arfsten to keep the match scoreless. Messi nearly made it 2-0 in the first minutes of the first half stoppage time, but his 25th-yard strike curled wide in the left post. The Crew came out firing in the second half and almost equalized in the 46th minute, but Ustari came up big again with a stop of Diego Rossi. 6 minutes later, Rossi had a clean look, but blew a chance for his 6th goal with an attempt well off target. The Crew had numerous forays into the final third, including a 4th minute of stoppage time when Daniel Gazdag stretched for a cross by Andres Herrera and redirected the pass inches outside the left post. World number 1 Aryna Sabalenka cruised into the Stuttgart Open semifinals on Saturday, while 2-time champion Iga Swiatek lost to Jelena Ostapenko for the 6th time in as many meetings. Now, Sabalenka reached the last 8 without striking a ball, following a bye and walkover, and took time to find her rhythm against Els Mertens before wrapping up a 6-4, 6-1 victory. Mertens broke for a 4-3 lead in the opening set, but Sabalenka hit back right away and reeled off 9 of the final 10 games to power into a semi-final showdown with Jasmine Paolini. Sabalenka will next play 5th seed Paolini after the Italian swept aside 4th-ranked Coco Gauff 6-4, 6-3. Sabalenka beat Paolini in straight sets en route to the title in Miami last month. A beaten finalist 3 times in a row from 2021 to 2023, Sabalenka has never won in Stuttgart. Ostapenko, ranked 24th in the world, won 6-3, 3-6, 6-2 in a clash of past and present French Open champions. Swiatek has now lost all 6 matches against the Latvian, with Saturday's defeat the first on clay. Swiatek came in the match with an 11-1 record on Stuttgart clay, but Ostapenko won the first 4 games and broke Swiatek's serve 3 times to win the opening set. The Pole fought back to send the match to a deciding set, but Ostapenko regained control, winning 12 of the opening 15 points on the way to victory. Ostapenko will face Russian Ekaterina Alexandrova in the semi-finals on Sunday, with final on Monday. Carlos Alcaraz cruised into his 3rd Barcelona Open final with a 6-2, 6-4 victory over Arthur Fils on a breezy Saturday and will face Holger Rune. On Saturday, the Spaniard took control from the start, breaking serve in the 3rd and fighting games of the opening set as Fils struggled with the swirling conditions. Alcaraz broke again in the 3rd game of the 2nd set and only stuttered when he squandered his first 2 match points with a double fault and a wild drive before clinching victory. After winning in Monte Carlo last week, Alcaraz remains perfect on clay this season. He has not lost in Barcelona since 2021. He won the tournament in 2022, 2023 before missing last year's event with an arm injury. Earlier, world number 13, Rune outclassed Kachanov 6-3, 6-2. The 21-year-old Dane did not face a breakpoint in the first set, but broke to love in the 7th game and broke again in the 9th. Kachanov, ranked 27th, suffered another break in the 2nd game of the 2nd set, with Rune consolidating for a 3-love lead. The Russian, 28, saved 2 break points in the 6th game, but Rune broke again in the 9th, wrapping up his victory with a passing shot to reach the final for the first time. The Dane offered huge variety in his shots and hit 20 winners to 13 unforced errors. Alexander Zverev will face Ben Shelton in the Munich ATP final on his 28th birthday after his straight sets win over Hungarian Fabian Marusan on Saturday. Now Zverev, the top seed on home soil in Munich, won 7-6, 6-3 as he targets a 3rd title at a tournament he won in 2017 and 2018. The final is the 38th of Zverev's career and first since he lost to Jannik Sinner at the Australian Open in January. Zverev broke early in the opening set to run out to a 2-love lead, but was broken back on the way to a tie-break, which the German dominated. Marusan fought hard, but was pushed into repeated errors by Zverev, who increasingly had the home fans on his side. The 77th ranked Marusan fought off to match points, but could not do so a 3rd time, allowing Zverev to reach Sunday's final. Earlier on Saturday, American world number 15 Shelton came from a set down to beat Argentine Francisco Cerundolo 2-6, 7-6, 6-4. Outclassed in the opening set, the 22-year-old American's fight back began in the 2nd with an early break. Cerundolo, ranked 22nd in the world, hit back to force a tie-break, but Shelton won it to level the match. The players exchanged breaks to open the 3rd set before Shelton broke again in the last game to pinch victory and reach the 4th ATP final of his career.
Membakar semangat juang 2 pasukan. Pemburuan tahta terulung bakal dimuktamadkan dengan pertembungan 2 gergasi. Harimau Selatan kini bersedia merempuh pertahanan kebal skuad Top Gajah. Nantikan penentuannya dalam siaran langsung perlawanan akhir Unify Gala Malaysia 2024-2025. Johor Darul Takzim bertemu Sri Pahang FC 26 April 8 malam di saluran OK dan Sukan RTM. Juga penstreaman langsung di RTM Click.
Up next, Nintendo Switch 2 sparks excitement despite high price. Hungry visitors gather to get their share of dried freshwater clams at a town in southern Cambodia, which is celebrating the new year by handing the delicacies out for free. Around 3 tons of clams were put out to dry in the sun on tables stretching a kilometer in length. The event in Kampong Cham province was organized by local authorities to celebrate the annual Khmer New Year, which takes place between April 14th and 16th, and traditionally features games, water fights, and visits to pagodas. Gaming specialists who have handled Nintendo's new Switch 2 say the console is a clear upgrade on its predecessor, but it lacks must-have new features and the progress comes at a steep price. Dozens of European journalists were invited to the Grand Palais exhibition space in Paris for a preview in one of 2 events held globally. They were allowed in shortly after the Kyoto-based company announced the hotly awaited launch of its latest iteration of the Switch for 5th June in a YouTube presentation watched by millions around the world. The Switch 2 retains the core features of the original that made it such a hit: detachable Joy-Con controllers and hybrid functionality that means it can be portable or plugged into a screen or projector. But it comes with a bigger, higher resolution screen, larger joysticks, improved buttons, faster processing time, and a battery that the company says will last between 2 to 6.5 hours. The 2 major design changes are a new C button that activates a game chat function, enabling players to talk with their friends while playing. And the controllers, now attached with magnets rather than sliding on, can be used like a computer mouse. They were demonstrated with shooting games such as Metroid Prime 4 or strategy challenges such as Civilization 7. Artists gathered in Aurora, Bolivia, to create large Easter sand sculptures depicting biblical scenes and Way of the Cross stations on Good Friday. Good Friday leads on to Easter Sunday, the most important and joyous day to the church's liturgical calendar. In the western part of the country, the dunes transformed into an enormous canvas of nearly 200 Argentine, Peruvian, and Bolivian artists who created biblical passages and the Way of the Cross stations.
Bueno, esta arena es bastante peculiar desde el punto de vista que es bastante fina y su cohesión entre granos para armar los volúmenes es bastante difícil. Como mojamos un poco la arena y inmediatamente se absorbe casi inmediatamente hacia abajo, entonces tenemos que aprovechar al máximo y con mucha velocidad la humedad para poder dar forma a estas monumentales esculturas de arena de Semana Santa.
The Way of the Cross marks 14 events called stations from the time of the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. The festival, which is running its 19th edition, is an annual traditional drawing large numbers to marvel at the sand creations. Well, that concludes today's edition of World Today. In our top story, WFP warns Gaza faces famine risk as food supplies run out. Until then, I'm Otto Othman. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thanks for watching.